I figure if I keep doing these things, I'll eventually get a style that makes sense, that works.
Yeah.
Was a bit of a joke.
Yeah.
But it's true.
I personally really like your content. I've seen your page specifically grow, and I've seen how you've been doing different content, been, I think, more intentional, and I find it great, insightful, and very humorful. And I think like I recently watched the one that you did about Gary Brecka. Gary Brecka is his name?
Yeah, I used to call him David Brecka, and they're like,
Brecka.
it's Gary, you dummy.
Okay. And I loved how you just picked apart his video, because a lot of people are getting information from these individuals, and I just like your expertise is obviously different.
Yeah, I like listening to other people, and it's not that I have an arrogance. It's like, no, they're wrong and I'm right. I feel like everyone kind of looks at the same human from different perspectives.
Yep.
And even when you don't understand what's happening, you can kind of like blur things together and be like, this is kind of what's happening. So in this video that you're referencing, he was talking about why people have some digestive issues, and he's like, it's nothing to do with food sensitivity and has nothing to do with gut biome. And that's like kicking me in the stomach, because I think literally everything is food sensitivity in a gut biome. But then I'm still listening. I haven't said like, you know what, this guy's a bum. But then when he dug in and explained his premise, I still was like vibing with it. And it's like, well, it has to do with not the gut but the stomach. And it's like, okay, well, there's elements there that I believe, because if you have underdigestion in the stomach, I believe you would have underdigestion in the intestines, and then gut biome stuff and sensitivities evolve from that.
Yeah.
But then he went the route of like methylation, and we don't eat enough stuff that has like methyl donors and folate, and I'm like, you're kind of like, you went like, you kind of skimmed the surface and then like ricocheted back into outer space. It's like, dude, like, but then I just took it back into like what I understand and what I see works. Like when I give people betaine, hydrochloric acid, which is also known as trimethylglycine.
Yeah.
People digest so much better. Their gut biome is stabilized. Their food sensitivities are reduced. So it's like, you're kind of there, Gary, but you went with like, let's test you for your mutations, your methylation mutations. It's like, but is it about that? Because, okay, even if they have those methylation mutations, which is a mouthful, now what are you going to do? You can't change your DNA. So you got to take trimethylglycine and folic acid or whatever. And I'm like, but you're not addressing their digestion, and you're not addressing the issue that our food sucks.
Yeah. It attributes a lot to genetics, which in my personal opinion is very low in today's society. I know what your thoughts on that, but I've read so many accounts of less than 5%, more recently less than 2% of things are genetic.
When things evolve, and like, you're not born with a problem, but you're born with the genetics for a problem.
Yeah, like a predisposition almost, not a predetermination.
Yeah. So what you're looking at is it inevitability? Is it a lifestyle that pushes you towards a problem? And if it is, then how are you still addressing it? If you're looking at issues with like long-term risk factors for illnesses, and you're like, well, you got a gene for this and you got risk for that, a lot of the times it's not a practical test. It's not giving you useful information, and doesn't often explain what you're feeling right now. If you've got like a ticking time bomb, are you just going to be anxious until you develop that disease, or are you going to just never develop it and still just have a horrible life because you're like, I'm eventually going to get this? And it's like, well, maybe you can be proactive. Maybe that's a good way of looking at those tests, because sometimes they come true, and sometimes they can be a preventative measure, but far too often they're not actually addressing the acuteness and the functionality of the condition you're experiencing. So if someone's got a digestive issue, and like I can't, every time I eat gluten, I break out into hives, and I'm like, well, it's in your DNA, and it's like, but it's the gluten. So yeah, your system doesn't like gluten. are you suggesting I fix your system, or should we just cut out the thing that's causing the problem?
Mm-hmm.
Some people, they're like, well, you want to go to the root cause. It's like, but sometimes the root cause is like, how are you going to reverse a DNA presentation, like the phenotype?
Yeah.
Can you?
No.
I switch cameras, so you can run with that as I take a sip of coffee.
I mean, yeah, when we think about genetics, I know there is, of course, very isolated ones. I think there's the Huntington's one, and there's a couple of others that are not coming to mind. But even Huntington's, I read in a recent book, where people who have that gene are very likely to get it, but even there's a small percentage of people that have that gene, that carry that gene, that don't, which sheds light, I think, into the environment, food, a couple of things that you talked about. When I think about genetics, of course, there's a role that they play, but I personally feel that the environment, especially, I think, foods being the biggest environmental determinant to both, ill health and well, like how well we feel.
So, I mean, ultimately, it's our environment, even if you got the gene or not, because it's not telling us the full picture. So if someone says like, well, it's in my family, and it's someone told me 2 evenings ago, they came in and we had done some hormonal testing, and she's like, wow, eventually it's just going to be breast cancer. I know it. I'm like, what? I'm like, what makes you say, like, she goes, well, everyone in my family, it's just an inevitability. I'm like, there's two ways to look at it. It's like either, yeah, okay, she's being practical and she can be proactive, and then also there's like, it's such a a negative vibe. It's like a sort of a Debbie Downer, like, oh, you know what, why be happy? Because you're eventually going to be sad. I don't get that. I don't know why it was irritable. I was irritable about it, or irritated me, because I think data and information is meant to help people. It's not meant to make people resigned.
Yep.
Or have a cynical look at things. But what do I know? This isn't even our topic.
It's not. This is the intro.
This is us. You came in from the parking lot. I'm asking how your day is, and we just start riffing.
Talking about genes and everything in between, food sensitivities.
Yeah. I mean, we talk mental health, and often men's mental health, and because that's really your forte.
Yep.
And in terms of your social media and a passion of yours, various projects that you're engaged with. Do you want to talk about maybe one or two of those that have been going on for you, and your feedback and what you're noticing? I think I have the same pants as you, by the way.
Our conversations are always great. One initiative that I recently launched is titled Men Express, and they're bi-weekly meetings where it's people that don't know each other, and sometimes they know each other based on the sessions. And essentially, it's a forum online. It's an online platform where men come together and can be vulnerable with one another, with like-minded individuals. Now, they could talk about anything. They could talk about recent dating. They could talk about difficulties in relationships. They could talk about difficulties in raising children, difficulties in being with someone who's pregnant, and how do they navigate that? The difficulties of being an upcoming father, or just a place where men can connect with one another and laugh. I think the purpose of this group is for men to talk about feelings, emotions, and everything else in between. There's such a hesitancy for men to discuss or be open about their emotions. And I have found from my experience, they're more likely to do so when they come together in a room where they don't even know who anybody is. Sometimes that can be. And they're getting unbiased opinions, in that a lot of us, of course, have friends, and we can find in our friends and they will give us good insight, but some of that can be biased because they've known us. Whereas if someone is coming to you and they know nothing about you, they might give you some raw, unbiased information that perhaps you would not have gotten otherwise through a friend that you've known for quite a while.
So in these meetings, are you ever shocked at what these other individuals come up with? Like, I mean, I presume none of them are like in healthcare. Maybe some are. But like, just is there like an innate wisdom that comes out when you're listening and you're like, holy cow, I wouldn't have thought of that.
Always, I guess.
That's a loaded question.
Yeah, it is a loaded question. There's always going to be things that they teach me and things that I teach them. I'm more of like a facilitator, if that makes sense. I don't really do much talking. I just kind of hang out there, and if there's insight that they want from like a health perspective, because I do work with men outside of this group, if there's information that they want on like health, medicine, that's where I will chime in. But typically, it's a very free-flowing discussion, and a lot of the times when we think about opinions, there's a lot of times where they say things that's like, wow, I would have never thought about that, or have never thought about answering that. One common example especially is children. I don't have children, right? So that's an area that I can only give insight from a theoretical perspective, but from a practical perspective, my insight is going to be limited.
Is it wrong to give an opinion if you're not in those shoes?
That's such a good question.
You want what I get a lot, because I think someone the other day said it to me, and I figure people think this way, and it's not to like pick on like a female saying it, but they were talking about a health condition that's like exclusive to females, and I think I said something like, "Oh, I can understand that that's been difficult," and she goes, "Yeah, but can you really?" And I'm like, "Well, I understand what a difficult thing is, and I know that what you're experiencing is difficult. So, no, I don't have to go through the exact same thing as you to know that it's difficult. I didn't say, hey, you know what, I know exactly how that feels, and this is how I navigated it. But enough about that. But, like, let's say with children, like, because there's a lot of people that have kids, and then as an adult and a mature professional, you can see, and you're like, what's wrong with them? That's they should not be doing that. I don't know. Let's say come up with a very simple example so no one gets mad. Like giving a toddler a car. Obviously, you wouldn't do that. But you're not a dad, so how can you say that? You have common sense.
Right.
There's some things that are just like, come on. But I mean, I find it interesting when people give opinions to strangers, because there is a little bit of I presume there's less bias and maybe less hesitancy to just give like honest, like, listen, you're screwing up here. Do you find that these men do they receive criticism well?
I think it depends on where they are in their journey. Some do, and some after one session never show up again.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it really depends on where they are emotionally. And how they accept criticism, not just in that setting, but how they accept criticism in their other lives, whether that be with their partner, in work, or in other areas. I think sheds good insight into how they just receive criticism overall.
Is there, I mean, I'm sure it's anonymous and, confidentiality, but is there any like trend or recurring themes that you see come up in these conversations?
Recurring trends.
Well, you mentioned like men having issues with like relationships.
I would say a big one is relationships. Navigating relationships, dating, advice, what to do.
Be specific. Give me a pseudo example. Let's just say someone is just dating someone and they don't know if it's going well. Is that an example? Does that come up?
That has come up, yes.
Yes.
That exact example has come up.
How did I know that? I'm not. It's a Zoom call, and there's one person that doesn't show their face. Doctor Who.
Yeah. That has come up, and they ask for advice. How do you know if things are going well in your relationship? And I think that's such a great question. How do you know if things are going well in your relationship? Like, what are some...
You're asking me?
Yeah.
It's been a long time. When I had to necessarily worry directly about that. But in a broader sense, when like men come and talk to me, usually it's younger men. The ones that are worried about it, you can drink. It's okay. Don't be shy. The guys that are worried about if a relationship are going well, they're usually the ones that are more worried about it than the other person. Because if a guy comes in and asks me what I think, it's because they're stressed about it, they're anxious about it, they're thinking about these things. They probably are on the short end of the stick in this situation.
What about if it's in the initial stages? You know, when you first meet someone and, you know, your body is overcome with these love hormones like you know, oxytocin, vasopressin, which are literally drugs in our body that can cloud judgment. What if is it reasonable in the first 3-4 months to even know if things are going well? Because a lot of the times when we meet someone that we like, naturally these hormones are going to play tricks on our minds, essentially, right? So is there a point where we should ask that question, where perhaps our body has almost returned to homeostasis, where it's like now it's good to kind of check in because your body is not you know, saturated with these love drugs? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, you know what? I think that's why it's good that men talk to men, or have at least have a friend,
Yeah,
or even just talk to a mom or someone that, or a sister, someone that would like have their back. Because if you're in a relationship and you're being pulled in one direction, the people around you are going to see it. They're going to be like, Tommy's busy again. He's not coming out for our, you know, beer and wings night that we usually have, that we've had every weekend for 5 years. And now he's got to, I don't know, he's got to do something he never used to do. But now because he's got another person, and he will never ever come out for wings again because there's gluten in this. So you can see character traits of an individual is like things that like were your norm are gone. Like you're no longer that guy. People will be like, remember when Tommy was fun and he smiled a lot and he used to tell jokes, and now he's really somber and recycling and drinking out of a Stanley. remember the old Tommy? This new Tommy is, I don't like him. He's very politically correct, and
but people, so
hemming his pants now.
Because when you meet someone, right, part of you changes, hopefully in a good way,
for the better.
Yeah,
in theory.
In theory.
Don't mind my camera switches. To emphasize a point.
At what point is it healthy or not?
Yeah.
Like when...
If Tommy... We'll just use Tommy. You don't know what Tommy, no. I presume. Okay. Let's say Tommy... I want to be on camera too. And Tommy was just our friend and didn't have a girlfriend. Tommy didn't shower. Tommy was a little smelly guy and he used to go to the gym and just go home and come out, and he just wear pants that had like kind of a perma stain. But now he has a girlfriend. Like now he like showers and he's like cleaned up a little bit, and he, you know, he's like not late for work anymore. So there's like positive changes that happen. Like you can judge a change as positive or negative. So if you see that it's like, oh wow, you know, he's really like, you know, he's taking care of him, he's happy, he's in a better place. So you're gonna see that. If you're gonna see like my earlier example is like he doesn't come out anymore and he's kind of like down and he's like always like apologizing for things, and I'm like, Tommy, you're nobody now. You're a puppy. So has
Tommy lost himself?
Yeah. I mean, Tommy is conforming to what another individual's wanting and expectations.
What's the difference between conforming and, in this example, sacrifice? Like where do we...
Okay, so if someone's dating someone and you no longer do the things that you used to do that were constructive and fun, like hang out with friends and like and now you're just sort of like, well, we have to go over this person's family's house and they have her friends and we're doing her stuff, and now it's like not a mutual thing. It's like it's an all or nothing because that's what her preference is. And it's always, I'm not saying her, I mean a lot of guys have the same.
Yeah.
They push things and they they're demanding, and ultimately it's a power struggle. Yeah. And it's a power struggle versus how infatuated someone is and how like eager they are for this relationship to work out. Because if you're putting in extra effort to make it work, you're trying way harder than you should. because it shouldn't have to be like I'm putting in 99%, because then if I don't and I put 98%, they're going to be mad at me, and then I'm going to be out of a relationship. And when you're in it, you're like, I don't want that. And then when you're out of it and you're looking back and it's like, what? Why didn't you guys say something? So like, does that make sense?
No, that makes sense.
And it starts subtle.
Yeah.
Like I remember examples where someone would be like, yeah, she didn't have a lunch, so I drove like downtown to bring her a lunch, even though she could have. And like, I mean, I was busy, but I still am like, downtown's not like across the street. Like sometimes you're like you're trying to do something nice, but you're like, that's like a couple times a week now. And it's like,
but that's actually an interesting example, because some might view that as an act of great care and love.
Yeah, whoever's getting the lunch. Would that but the thing is, would they give it back?
Well, assuming it's reciprocated.
It never is.
Why is it? I mean, never. That's an absolute. What do you mean it never is? In a relationship, you mean like what?
No, when someone is giving a lot,
okay,
a lot, like you're like, whoa, that's a lot. Any normal person would recognize at some point. It's like, you know what, that's a lot. Like I don't want that.
Okay.
If someone said to you, you know what, I'm going to give you $1 million, and they do it, and it's like, no, I can't accept this. It's like, no, trust me. And then like, I'm going to give you another $1 million, and then you're like, oh no, you really shouldn't.
Okay.
And after a while, it's like, when did you think that this was okay to continue taking? Like, what do you give back? I was like, well, I said thank you.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent distinction, because there's one instance someone can just keep taking and taking, but I think it takes a mature individual to realize, I'm taking a lot, I should probably say something. So I think that's important that you kind of highlighted that.
Yeah, you should feel like you are giving, but there is a reciprocity. You have to know that's like, no guys, but like, you know, she came over, she made me dinner, and like she helped me grocery shopping, and like she helped me like around the house. Like there's like, no, and then when people hear that, they're like, oh, okay, like it's not like you're not just a dummy in this situation.
I have a question to kind of switch gears.
Okay.
I just kind of came to fruition. In a relationship, do you think it's healthy? You know, let's assume that a guy and a girl get together. He has his set of friends, she has her set of friends. Let's say there's 2 or 3 very close friends that they normally confide in for whatever reason. They can trust them without fear of judgment. And in a relationship, you know, there's gonna invariably be problems, of course, and you might talk amongst them with your partner, or you might go to therapy, or whatever that is. Do you think it's healthy for an individual, whether that be a girl, go tell her girlfriends or guy friends, and vice versa, problems that they're having in a relationship? Or do you think it's healthy to keep those problems within your circle, meaning you as a couple, and your therapist if you go to one?
Loaded question. I think what you're gonna see is, in the beginning, it's probably good to, you know, trust your friends. But as the relationship evolves and it becomes like, no, this is a long term, like, I think I'm going to marry this person, maybe. Like, there's going to be a pulling away of like what you share and divulge, because now the stakes are higher, and you don't want your friends to have like a negative, like bad taste in their mouth of who you're with, because they'll just hear the bad part. And like your frustration, and then when your frustration and that argument or whatever is dealt with and gone, you're back to feeling happy with this person. Meanwhile, your friends are like, I hate Becky.
But what if...
No offense, Becky's.
Well, what if... That's an interesting name you used. But what if you, when you're talking to your friend, for instance, and you're right, because a lot of the times guys are just going to vent, or they're going to be talking about what they're upset. But what about if the guy is owner, or, you know, being accountable for stuff that he did wrong in the relationship, or, you know, in that fight, like, you know, Marissa did this and this and this, but you know what, I did this and this and this. So like giving both sides of the story, not just bad mouthing Marissa. Is that different?
Yeah, it's a little bit different, and it's mature, but you're also like, I mean, it's not wrong that you're getting feedback from your circle. Like, you're the people that are going to have your back, because if they have your back, the hope is that they're not going to just blindly agree with you. And it's like, you know what? All the bad things you did were fine. I would have done the same. All the bad things she did, she's a horrible person. Dump her. So, I mean, you're going to get maybe a little bit more more biased feedback, but that's okay. It's good that you have people in your team behind you. But I think over time there's a risk of, you know, if you're having a lot of issues, I mean, it might be an indication that things are not going well. But then there's also an idea of like, maybe you don't want to like just air out all your dirty laundry all the time, because eventually you might marry this person and then they're just going to hate her always, because she'll be like, remember when, you know, she dumped him for that weekend and then he was crying and then we saw her on Instagram. I'm like, whatever, paint a scenario, and then vice versa. But yeah, I mean, why are relationships so complicated anyways? Why is there so much drama? Why is everyone going for therapy now?
Why?
Answer. Tell me what you think.
Why are relationships so complicated?
Do we overthink?
We as in me and you, or we as in guys, or we
everyone?
I think a lot of people tend to be overthinkers, but generally speaking, why relationships are so complicated is, in this day and age, I think social media has manipulated, you know, deceived many people. I think many people think it's very easy to find someone.
Well, let's be honest. Some people can easily find a replacement. Very easily.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's sexist to say that. I just presume... whenever you start a sentence like that, it's always good to pause and think about if it's good to say what you're going to say. I'm going to clarify my thought. I feel like, this is a saying I've made before, 80% of guys go after 20% of the girls out there.
80% of guys go after 20%.
So the bulk of like single guys go after what they envision their like ideal female should look like, act like, traits. And I think that is what they can picture in their mind, like on like somewhat of a Neanderthal type of scale. I think that is a reflection of like a minority of what women actually look like or act like, however you want to paint that picture. So sometimes I would be like, well, women have it easy. They can get a new boyfriend like that. And women would say like, that's not true. Like, yeah, I have a friend that's like that, but all my other girlfriends, no, they don't have that. And I would like think about it. It's like, because all I know is that these guys are like waiting in line for this girl. And I'm like, it's because they're going after the same kind of girl. Does that make sense?
Do you think it's easier for women to find a replacement or for a guy to find a replacement?
I think I just answered that question.
But you said what?
Well, I guess I think I'm saying I think it's hard out there for most people. I feel like there's a small percentage of women that they can dump someone this morning, and by afternoon they already got a replace. Like they have like 3 guys. They're like, hey, you know, when are we gonna get together? That's a small percentage of women, and I think those are the ones that maybe are the influencers, or they have like the attention on Instagram that is what leads to frustration for women, because they're like, oh, I'm not like that. I don't look necessarily like that. I don't portray myself online. I don't get that kind of attention. But then it's also the guys that they're like oogling these girls, and they're like, well, I want her. And it's like, well, why? Is it because like she's like, you know, what's it called? There's a newbie term that all the cool kids are using.
That's not influencer?
Yeah, but like they're just like throwing themselves out there. Like they know what they're doing.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So like I think it's hard for most people, but most people don't know why it's hard. I think that men are like narrow-minded en masse, like what they're looking for. They want like...
Why are they narrow-minded? On what they're looking for?
I'll explain that. I think guys initially go with what they see
physically.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they deal with what they hear and with afterwards. Like you can see someone that's visually beautiful, but they're a basket case, right?
Do you think a lot of men, if they were able to, if let's say they pair up with someone who's physically stunning by most people's perspective, and then after a few months they find out that they're not someone that they align with, do you think they will overlook a lot of those things just for the sake of being with them because they're so physically attractive?
Yeah, 9 times out of 10. I think almost every time a guy is having an issue with a girl, he's overlooking things that are like clear problems. And to contrast that with like a woman, that I think they will want to invest in that relationship to kind of like help him or fix him, and it's not about an appearance thing. Like they're invested, whereas a guy is like, I don't want to lose my investment. Does that make sense? I think it's different.
Why do men overlook a lot of the things that they don't like just because she's beautiful?
Because it's hard for most guys. It's hard to get that like dream chick.
Okay, physically.
Because like, oh, she's amazing. Why did you break up with her? Are you stupid? And they're like, well, she would hit me and like she was cheating on me. But yeah, she was stunning actually. What was I thinking? Like that is the guy vibe.
Yeah.
Whereas a woman, women tend to, I don't know how to explain it. I think it's like maybe they feel like they've invested a lot and they've put in a lot of work, and they're kind of waiting for this to fix itself or for him to kind of catch up, and often they don't.
In the age of social media, do you think it's healthy if a guy follows other, I guess, women, like influencers, and vice versa? Is it healthy for women to follow, male models? And this is
you mean like fashion, or like
no,
like
not fashion, like
models, like role models.
Not role models, no.
You mean like
influencers,
pretty.
Sure. And so like girls working out or men working out, whichever perspective. And this is after you've solidified your relationship, because of course anything that came before you were together does not count. It's unfair to penalize someone for, I guess, and this is my perspective, for following these people, I guess. But if you start following these people, during your relationship, is that healthy? Or should you remove all these people when you're in a relationship? This has come up in the group, so that's why I'm bringing this up. It just kind of came to my mind.
No, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Most of the time, you probably should remove them.
You should remove them.
Yeah.
Okay, what if...
Well, I mean, it really, the real question is, why are you following them? Like, this actually came up with my wife yesterday. On my Instagram, I follow hundreds of people, and one girl, she's like a fitness model, and people are going to be like, yeah, right, you want to know her exercise. But I mean, I really did want to know her exercise. She keeps on doing very, very interesting exercise that I would want to do.
Right. But
she's also a thirst trap. That's the term. So then, I was following her, and then now, but what I'm noticing is that more and more of her content is thirst trap as opposed to the exercises,
like educational.
So I unfollowed her. That would be my answer. If you're like looking at something and it's like, this isn't information, this isn't content, this is just like provocative, then you don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you gonna watch someone else? You got someone? Yeah, that's yours now. You're cutting off. It's like there is an element of the monogamy that has to be there. It's like, who are you looking at? Whose six pack are you staring? I don't want to be dealing with that.
Mm-hmm. So if I'm understanding correctly, you should be, unless it's like educational or informative for whatever you're using it for, you should go through your list when you get in a relationship and remove all people that you think can potentially be an issue.
I want to know why more ugly people aren't social influencers. They're not as successful as the pretty ones.
Well, I mean, that's a very simple question, no? We live in a world of vanity, and
I want to hear this. Go ahead.
from like physically, we live in a world of novelty, superficiality, and vanity. So it's no surprise to me that if there's a really good looking, handsome man who's shredded, and there's a really good looking woman, and they just simply post provocative pictures, they're going to gain traction versus someone who isn't. Again, simply from like a superficiality, vanity, judgmental perspective, which is awful, but I think that's the world we live in, unfortunately.
You're not helping.
Brutal honesty. I mean,
well, yeah, I mean, okay, so then at the end of the day, social media is just like porn.
social media can be used for a lot of good things, but 95% of the time it isn't. And I pretty stern on that opinion. I use it a lot for educational educational purposes. But it's easy.
You know what? Give me your Instagram. I want to see who you're following.
But it's easy to get on Instagram and look at an algorithm, and then you just find yourself aimlessly scrolling.
It's the algorithm. That's what I'm like. How did you? What are all these
algorithm?
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I'm just in a bad loop. Sorry. I tried resetting my phone and it keeps coming back. I don't know.
Algorithm. I don't know. Social media can be very tricky nowadays in relationships. I think it causes a lot of problems.
Yeah, I mean, if you're making fascinations and machinations in your mind about other people, then you're not being committed. And then you're gonna start finding flaws in the person you're with. Mm-hmm. You're gonna be like, this model, I bet wouldn't leave the garbage for me to have to take out. I bet she takes out the garbage every day.
Yeah, it's an interesting issue that presents a lot in relationships nowadays. Liking pictures. Like if you post a picture and there's a lot of girls that like your picture, is that a problem?
Yeah, it's a problem because not enough girls like my picture.
but truthfully, right?
Girls, women, I don't care. Just follow me, people.
If you post a picture or a video and there's a whole bunch of women that have liked it, is that your fault? What if your partner?
Hey, come on, look at me. Is it my fault? No, you know what? No one's gonna be. Okay, so there's a distinction between like a professional, like, or business page or Instagram account, like for me, versus if you're putting like, hey, I'm at the gym, and you take a picture of yourself, and then 20 girls instantly like it.
Fair. Let's say it's a professional video, a reel.
That's good. We're in natural medicine. We should be getting a lot of likes from females. Most of our patients are female.
That is true, yeah.
But so if you had a spouse, they wouldn't be jealous of that unless you're DMing these people at 2 a.m. and like, hey, how was your day? Did you take my vitamins? Mm-hmm. Like, that's not appropriate.
No, there should be no interaction with them.
Virtually none.
There should be no apart from them liking your photo. That's where it should.
But was that your question?
I don't remember what my question was.
No, you asked if it was okay that.
Oh yeah, is it okay?
I got a lot of likes from
women.
Yeah. Then you're putting out good content. What's the real question here? Here, in preparation,
You never have a script. You're always so good.
It's not a script.
Impromptu.
It's a quote-ish, like paraphrased.
Okay.
And I think it's on vogue to our conversation.
Okay.
And oddly enough, it came from Chris Rock. It just came up in my feed, my algorithm. Yeah.
I was gonna say Rush Hour, but that's Chris Tucker.
Different Chris. Yeah, different comedian. So essentially what he was outlining is it's hard to be a man and to be loved. He said children, women, and even dogs are loved unconditionally. Men are only loved on the condition that they provide something.
Wow.
Let that sink in. No wonder Will Smith slapped you.
So I can actually, that is a powerful sentiment. There was one, this is kind of I don't remember, I heard this in a podcast, and I think this kind of speaks to this quote quite nicely in that it said, you can see what a man test what a woman's not a woman's worth test a woman's commitment to a guy when he has nothing. You can test a man's commitment to a woman when he has everything. That I think is also another powerful, I think, quote that kind of speaks to this, because this is saying, will a woman be with a guy who, if he provides nothing? I think it's possible, and that will really test a woman if a guy has nothing. But I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, what I think is, what do you mean by a guy provides nothing? Because in my mind, it sounds like you're saying provides nothing financially.
When I say provide, yes, exactly. That's exactly it. So if a man who's lost everything and has nothing to give financially, right?
Well, I mean, my first question is then why is she with him? Was that too cynical of a question?
It was.
No, I just like, why are you with him? He got nothing. Maybe Chris Rock is right. Maybe it is right. Maybe men are useless unless they provide something.
What is something?
I mean, probably a service or financials. Like, you gotta do something. Yeah, like, I don't know. Why are you laughing so hard?
Hold on. So when he says provide something, do you think he's alluding to many different things?
Probably money.
You think money, not emotional, intelligence, or
I don't think a woman.
You don't think a woman values?
I didn't say that.
Right, you're right. I did not jump the gun.
You want to be a feminist on this panel? Let me give her relax, man.
Feminist.
I don't think a woman will exclusively look for emotional support just from men. Like, no, they're not going to be like, I need a man for emotional support, because they got a lot of emotional support from their friends, their family, because that's a strong point in a female world. They need that emotional support. They usually have those connections. Very rarely would a woman have like zero connection in the world, have no one to talk to, and then find that in a man.
Yep.
Whereas men, they're like, I never really thought about feelings or emotion. I never really talked to anyone before. None of this is absolute, because people are going to text me and they're like, my husband's my only rock. And like, that's great. Mm-hmm. He should keep being a rock.
So if a woman meets a guy,
yes,
and she knows nothing about him, they go on a first date, and he, financially speaking, like he's barely scraping by.
Yeah.
But everything else is...
There's not going to be a second date.
There's not going to be a second date.
Unlikely.
Yeah. I mean,
That's not true. I'm only kidding. However, if someone is like, whatever, not able to support, and it's extremely common, really common. You have to provide something in this relationship.
Yeah. Like,
you can't just be like you have to show some type of motivation or drive. Like I think it was a Kanye song. It's like something about like he's gonna turn that car, a Yugo, into a Lexus or something. Like you gotta have drive. You have to show that you're working towards something,
like some sort of ambition. Or
in contrast to like when I seen relationships where the guy is an absolute bum and everyone knows it, and the cuteness fades, and you get over it, and you don't care about like, oh, he's so cute, he knows how to dance. Like, no one cares after like 4 years, and you're bailing him out all the time, and he's being a bum. Eventually, you're gonna be like, why am I wasting my time and my resources? This guy's not doing. He's useless. A lot of guys. That's increasingly common.
How many men do you think are okay with being with a partner who provides?
Increasingly high, and that's scary. And it's scary because it dovetails with a guy's lack of drive and motivation to do anything. And if a man doesn't have drive to work and to accomplish something, you don't have to be a superstar, but build up to something. if you lose that, you regress as a man, and you will become a child with a spouse that's your mom. Discuss.
So you would say it's increasingly high where men are more comfortable with women being more financially, providing more financial resources than the guy.
It's not about if it's like 50-50 or he's like, she's making more than him. It's about like him completely just relying on her and him not actually like with some kind of potential that he's seeking to reach. Like if a guy, if like your wife is like, she's a nurse and she works extra shifts, and he's a gardener, and you know what it is, it was a bad winter, and he was off for about 7 months, and well, then don't be a gardener.
That's interesting.
Why?
Not the gardener part, but more so.
Nothing against gardeners, but they usually do snow removal. They're smart. We got to do something in the winter.
I think my question, to be more specific, is
I didn't answer your question. Oh, shoot.
I don't think I asked it a bit more like
direct.
Direct, yeah.
Okay.
There's a couple. How many men in this day and age are okay with a female making significantly more money than them? They still go to work. They still work. Maybe they don't have ambition. They're okay with going to work 10 to 5 in an office job, making minimum entry level.
10
and that's
to
okay.
5. Holy cow. Not even doing a full day.
10 to 5.
Yeah, I mean, might as well make it 10 to 3 and beat traffic.
How many men do you think are actually okay with making significantly less than their?
I think it's an increasing number, and I think it's fine if your female spouse is making more than you. It's not about like, oh, I get it. I got to get an extra job to make that extra 10,000 so I could be ahead of her. It's not about that. But I think women have had in the last few decades more of like whether it's a push or role models or opportunity or whatever you want to call it, that is helping them or trying to strive for higher potential income. People are still going to argue it's not even. However, if the male is like languishing behind, I think that there's a problem there. And eventually there is going to be a problem where it doesn't matter what anyone says. If you're really, really outpacing your partner and you don't see that they're trying to do something, make up the slack, then you're going to be bitter. And I think in the past, we're just used to maybe older generations, like, women either weren't working or were stay at home or were making less. So that was kind of just like assumed to be the norm. So men may have an easier time with that because it also helps their ego that if they're making much more than their spouse. However, if you flip the script, I think a woman would become potentially more frustrated. Not that they're making more than their husband, but that the husband is just not even trying to like fill the void a little bit. Because if like, unless the woman is like a surgeon and she's making $300,000 a year and the husband is like, I mean, if he's like a principal making 150, then it's like, hey, that's a good job. It's a full thing. But if he's like, yeah, he's kind of like a photographer and he was a photographer in his 20s when we met, and now he's 45 and he works him twice a week. I'll be like, your wife's going to get mad eventually. She's going to resent you. So that's a scenario.
How far, like in that example, when there is where resentment is and anger is inevitable, at what point in that relationship or in any relationship where resentment and anger has built up so much that there's no way of reconciliation?
I think that eventually if you're reading the writing on the wall, if you can say like, hey, you know what, I suspect that this is an issue. Is there a way that, okay, I'm going to get a part-time job. If there's like a initiative, again, it comes back to a male's drive. If you feel like, you know what, I get a little down. I get a little seasonal affective disorder, so I don't like necessarily getting up early in the winter. I get to work around noon. I work for myself. You're showing a lack of motivation, and eventually this person's going to be like, either you pick it up or this isn't going to work out. And I mean, it's not, you kind of have to also recognize, like, this is who you picked. It's not easy just to be like, you know what, it's not working out. You know what, we gave it a good 10 years and, you didn't really upgrade yourself. So, hey, let's just, shred this and start over.
Yeah.
So, sometimes you buyer beware. These traits are there early on.
Mm-hmm. You just got to pick up on them.
Yeah, that's where like that puppy love is kind of like
that's the problem.
A nemesis. And you did not at all address my quote. You just went off with the gender gap and pay and stuff, but that's okay. I did prepare.
Do you think it's capable for humans to provide unconditional love? Going back to that quote.
Yeah. Why?
I don't know.
You don't love people unconditionally? Wow, it's a hard ass here. Everyone's got condition. I'm surprised you came to so many of my podcasts. This must be a type of unconditional.
Because he says without in going back to that, then they can't be. Say that. What was the end part of that quote?
Men are only loved on the condition that they provide something. I think there's truth to it, and I think it's not bad that it's true.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not to say that, I mean, people would take it as, well, you're saying that a woman doesn't provide something and they're still love. It's like, it's almost not about that. I think men and women see love and appreciation in slightly different ways.
Yeah.
Which is okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think innately what women provide men, you can't put a dollar amount to. Not that you can put a dollar amount to men, but men don't provide emotionally to women like they would provide to men, theoretically.
Sorry.
Did I hit something? Did I hit the trigger? You one of your eyes start to close a little bit. What did you say? I made a statement, so this is probably going to be the end of the conversation. I said, I don't think men provide to women emotionally in the same way that women provide to men or to each other.
Why not?
I don't think they know how.
Why can't they know how? Or if they, and I agree with you, they don't. Well,
it's because they lack the DNA methylation. Gary Brecka was right after all.
It's in the genes.
Yeah, see? That maybe, hey, you know what?
Maybe. Is there a supplement for that?
Probably not. We can make one.
To talk about emotion.
We should do that. We should make a supplement that will make your husband more emotionally available.
Slip it into his drink, kind of like a drug, but I mean that's not okay. But I mean,
it's not okay. It's a Mickey, your husband.
That would be a multi-billion-dollar supplement.
We could quit. We just
take this 3 times a day.
We don't even have to post these. We can just talk every day and just come up with more crazy ideas. But what would be in it?
Some sort of truth serum. What is that? What is a truth serum, medically speaking?
Sodium pentothal or something like that. I think. Hopefully that's not the wrong thing. Let's analyze that. Let's dig into our nutraceutical pharmacology.
Mm-hmm.
So if a man, what do you think? Okay, what does a man have to have in order to be willing to be more emotionally available? I think we'd have to give them some type of adrenal or kidney tonic.
For sure, an adrenal kidney tonic, something,
like ashwagandha.
An ashwagandha, maybe.
And then maybe
a calming agent like an L-theanine. GABA.
I was gonna say L-theanine.
Yeah.
Okay.
GABA, like a combo of.
Yeah.
Are we creating something?
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping.
And what would we call it? Emotive. That's probably been taken.
I don't know. We have to come up with I actually like the marketing side of things. So, I mean, what would it do? It would help your man become more emotionally available. So sometimes we smush the words together. Man-available. No, it's a bad one.
Yeah. I think it would do great. The marketing would sell it. That in itself, just saying this would make it.
I have the name. Emotional. It's good.
That can work.
That might work. What's
Or you
this?
just have to
What are
say-
you giving me in my water? It's just some vitamins, honey. And he finishes the cup. He starts crying. Something's wrong with my eyes.
Just completely emotionally intelligent in 1 hour.
Okay, well, tell me what that means. Emotional intelligence.
What does that mean?
Yeah, because that sounds like something. It's a phrase you use.
I think as a man, we experience a lot of feelings and emotions, and a lot of the times we don't, we know what they are. We know that we're angry, we know that we're sad, we know that we're happy, but we don't know how to perhaps express these emotions to other people. Like when you're feeling sad as a guy, a lot of the times you just kind of keep it within. But you won't actually verbalize, I feel sad, or I feel withdrawn, or I feel like I'm not able to go to work today because I don't have the mental capacity to do so.
Well, that's bad. Like that whole. Okay, let's put the brakes on there. You just said I'm sad. I don't feel like going to work today.
Not in the sense that
I'm gonna put something in your drink. It's the opposite of emotional.
when I say
It's called He Man Up.
yeah.
It's the Andrew Tate special.
When I say I'm sad, I don't want to go to work. We're talking about someone who's very mired in their, mental disturbance in that moment, or that they simply can't function.
What if they are starving?
What if they're starving?
Yes. Because every time we talk about this stuff, I think about the Great Depression. Not to necessarily someone's depression.
Yeah.
The Great Depression. Well, no one had food. And so everyone was depressed.
Yep.
And like, what did they do? Stay home? Well, they try to find work. People would take rail cars to like the next town over.
Yeah.
Husbands left their home country and moved here to work for years to save up money and then bring their family over. And that was lonely for them, I'm sure. The ones that didn't see prostitutes. Of course, I had to sabotage my own argument. But having said that, the ones that were honest guys, but yeah, I think in the back of my mind, whenever I talk about emotions, I always get mad at this idea of like, well, you got to really understand your emotions. And I think sometimes too much understanding is what makes us depressed in the first place. Discuss.
Too much understanding makes us depressed in the first place.
Hey, do you like that picture I made? I got that print. I took that picture myself from Lake Ontario.
You must have taken a boat to do that. When I say, obviously, but I'm saying like hold on, let me be clear when I say this, because I went on a boat ride maybe about a month ago, and I actually have a very similar vantage, and I've never had this vantage before, like 2 months ago. And it wasn't a ferry to like the islands; it was like a private boat.
Yeah.
I guess that's what you did.
Oh wow, Mr. Show Off, Mr. Yacht.
This is actually your yacht.
No, I was just.
Did you take this photo?
I did.
That's actually crazy. That's stunning.
I'm proud of my art, and that was on a Samsung 24.
Oh, that's why it's a little bit blurry over here.
No. That's a lens flare that I did a
That's
little
cool
bit
though,
of
like
photoshopping after to accentuate some color.
It's a very cool shot.
Yeah. Anyways, what were you saying?
Sometimes when you are so emotionally intelligent, you could hold on.
I think it's good
being so emotionally intelligent can lead to unnecessary sadness.
Sometimes ignorance is bliss.
Yep.
You don't want to be ignorant to the point like you don't perceive people's emotions. You don't know when someone's upset with you. You don't understand when you're having a bad day. You need to understand that. But you can't mire yourself in it. You got to be able to be like, oh, well, you know what? The glass is half full. I think depression pulls people away from optimism, and it's sinking you deeper and deeper into emotions that you have to fight them. And I think in the process of making people more emotionally accountable, it also makes them less emotionally insensitive, because sometimes you have to kind of just like push things aside. You can't, like, the body does this. The body does push trauma or push injury to the side when you're working, when you have something that you need to accomplish, like our adrenaline or cortisol, all that. Like, you won't feel pain.
Yeah.
But then later on, when you're at in a safe place, you're relaxed, then you're going to feel it, because now your body's like, now we can deal with this. I think if we're going to be like, no, I got to analyze my feelings in real time, you are not going to accomplish anything in life. You're going to be like stuck. I mean, and people, I know people are going to, if they hear this, they're going to be offended because it's calling them out. But you can't just be stuck in your emotions. Like, our emotions are a good thing, but they're not the be all and end all. Like, it's like saying to someone, you don't vote on emotion. You vote on the, what are the points that you're hoping that this person will accomplish and address, and what aligns with your values. Emotions are like, well, you know what, but this person, like, I don't like how they talk. And it's like, well, they may not talk the way you like, but maybe they are going to accomplish what you would like. And life is like that.
Can you argue then people who often get stuck in, let's say mood disturbances, anxiety, stress, panic, etc., they tend to be extremely sensitive, emotionally intelligent people who are more susceptible, perhaps?
Yeah, I think that's the point.
Yeah.
I think if you know too much about emotions and you focus too much on, you're going to be more depressed. Because, like, is there a way to make someone not depressed?
So how does...
Think about that.
Hold on, actually, before I ask is there a way to make someone not depressed?
Yeah.
Of course.
How? Because a million people want to know.
I mean, that's a huge question, but...
Well, you said yes, so we're waiting for the answer.
Okay, so I would say yes, and, very simply, I mean, not simply, but do you have a strong support system? Do you have meaningful relationships? Do you feel connected in your work? What type of food are you eating? Is your blood chemistry optimized in a sense? Are you deficient in any vitamins, minerals? When we think about depression, it's multifaceted for most people. Some people, therapy or talk therapy, or you're disagreeing, or you have something to add on, but I'd love to hear. For some people, pharmacotherapy or talk therapy can suffice, but for most people, we need more.
Oh, that's fine.
But
like, those are all pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah.
And some people need a bigger piece of one area and a smaller piece of another. But if you're going to say that you can just stop being depressed, depression is something that kind of comes, and then the hope is that it just goes. Not a lot of people feel like, you know what, I'm a little bit less depressed today, and then I'm a little bit less depressed the next day. Like, it's sort of like a cloud that lifts. So I'm asking a real question. It's like, it's not something that is measured like, you mentioned blood chemistry, you mentioned other, like, hormone, like, whatever can be, like, there's stuff that you can measure, but none of that is a measure of how depressed someone is.
Yeah.
Whereas the experience of not being depressed, or being, like, in, like, a more happier state, that's a very undefined line. It's like you kind of don't know it until you're already in it.
I think, I don't know, I have to, when you said depression comes and goes, I have to say that, again, in my, like, opinion and experience, I don't think it's something that necessarily comes and goes. You don't necessarily wake up one day and say, wow, I'm depressed. I think it's something that slowly, chronically happens, and for you to get out of that, it's going to be a reversal of slow.
I said that.
Huh? Oh, you did.
I was saying that. I agree.
Oh, I see.
I think what I like if we track back a little bit, I think the idea is like the more someone's into their emotions, they're more likely that they're going to be a depressed person.
Okay, gotcha.
Is that valid?
Yeah. So actually, this is a good point for my other question, where I agree with you when you say the more, I guess, sensitive people are to emotions, the more likely they might be, like I said, mired in their disturbance or mental health related difficulties. But what about people, specifically men, who give off this emotional stoicism? Are they not likely to be depressed because they're so emotionally unaware? Does that almost prevent them from feeling depressed or anxious?
Yeah,
it does.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, really? So you think men who are not sensitive to emotion cannot be depressed or anxious?
They're less likely.
Less likely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm comfortable saying yeah. I mean, you may not agree, or you may not think that it's that straightforward. But the more someone is emotionally intelligent, as you described, they're going to have a higher degree of depression because they're feeling things more. A man who's stoically emotionally blunted or whatever, they can feel sadness, they can be unhappy, but they may not assign it a value of depression, or they may not have traits that are consistent with depression consistently. And sometimes it could turn into anger or grumpiness or attitude issues.
Can they have connected relationships if they're so...
It's harder.
Okay.
I think that does dovetail. Like, if you're emotionally intelligent, you will have probably richer relationships with people. But is there a risk of you having more depression and other things? Yeah, and I don't think that they're completely connected. I think there is a little bit of a coincidental occurrence there.
Yeah.
People who have better emotional relationships, they also have a higher risk of depression, but that doesn't mean the two are connected.
What do you think is like a healthy medium between, ultra sensitive, empathetic, and on the contrary, emotionally stoic? Where's like a healthy medium? And how do we find that healthy medium?
I think you've got to have a real strong center of what makes you satisfied as an individual. Because I tend to see people who have depression, they are not content with where they are. There's something missing in their life, in their accomplishments, and missed opportunities, something that has saddened them. And they haven't recovered from that. Or they don't see how that maybe was like that lost opportunity was actually a bullet that was dodged. People presume that when one of my needs isn't met, it's a punishment, as opposed to maybe it was a fortuitous situation. A lot of people, they're like, you know what? I wanted to marry Debbie way back. And then, I was heartbroken. And then 20 years down the line, I found out that she killed her husband. So maybe I got lucky. So that's a situation of someone like, hey, you know what? It didn't work out, but it was probably for the best.
Yeah.
So there's that. But people need to have emotions. People do need to understand. Like, I think with the stoicism, and I could picture like an older dad that they have like grown daughters, and they're like, yeah, Dad, I don't know, I really like him. I don't know if he likes me back. And the dad's like, whatever. You'll probably get married one day. You'll find someone. Not really emotionally available. It's very practical advice.
Yeah.
But in the moment, you're kind of like numb, and they're like, gee, thanks, Dad, you're really there for me. And then the dad would be like, well, what do you want me to say? He doesn't like you, he's a loser. Sounds like good advice to me in part of my brain. The other part of my brain is like, okay, but she's coming to you because she wants to, like, hey, but it's gonna be okay. Why don't we go for like a drive? Remember we used to go to McDonald's and get you something? You'll feel better. Hey, maybe you'll meet someone in the drive-thru. I don't know. These are guy things. But then the mom will be like, no, that's not how you say it.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, okay, well, I submit that she would probably do a better job. But there's an aspect, like, I think the guy has to have a little bit of like a numbness to the emotions. Because if we're all crying all the time, no one's gonna like. If I come to you crying and you're like, oh, yeah, me too, and it's like, oh, this is not what I was. I was looking for a rock and I got a wet blanket.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
I got to go back to you.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So are men only loved on the condition that they provide something? And is that bad?
I would say yes.
Okay, so what do I have to provide?
And I don't think it's bad depending on how you look at it, because that can be, if you're looking at it from the myopic lens of finances, then yes, I would say that's bad. But you could provide many things to your partner: finances, emotional stability, comfort, love, safety for conversation, so many different avenues. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's context dependent. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how I would.
Is it only context? I had highlighted another thing that I thought was interesting. I did a chat GPT, and I said, give me 10 important statistics regarding men's mental health in North America. It gave me like two sets of 10. So I got 20 different points here.
Okay.
Most of them are just like kind of typical stuff. But then this one was interesting. It says workplace and mental health. Men tend to derive their self-worth from their work, and job-related stress contributes significantly to mental health struggles. So it's slightly on the other side of things. So whether a guy is underperforming or not accomplished, or he's very, very like committed and accomplished, but the stress of like maintaining performance, or, keeping up with expectations at home, or the stresses of like running your own business and whatever it may be. Like, I mean, some people may say like, oh, you're darned if you do, you're darned if you don't. You might as well just like, get a 9 to 5 and who cares, call it a day.
Yeah.
Whereas other people are like, well, that might be okay for some people, but depending on, this is highlighting the idea that maybe some men are depressed because they're drawing their self-worth from their accomplishments, which is kind of pulling from the idea, like, are men valued based on what they provide?
Yeah.
So there seems to be a commonality where, inherently, men have to provide something in society. Mm-hmm. And if we're talking in terms of relationships, what's the emphasis? Is the emphasis that they are a provider, or is it like, kind of like more of a well-rounded, like, well, you gotta like, be there for your family. You gotta be there for your spouse, your kids, you gotta, the neighbors, or, you kind of like, you don't be just like this rock that doesn't show emotion, but then you also have to be a rock so people can lean on you, both financially and emotionally. It's sort of a blurry, undefined. It's like, how do you guy nowadays? You like that?
I do like that. That's a great question. How do you guy nowadays? I think the emphasis is definitely on the financial aspect of things, but I would be optimistic and say I think that's changing, and hopefully it's better for you to be a well-rounded individual.
Why is it better
to be a well-rounded individual?
Yeah.
And not strictly just providing financial resources?
When you answer it like that, then yeah, that makes it clear. Never mind, I retract my question. Carry on. Hey, this is a live, raw video, man.
It's the best way to keep it organic.
Blurt things out, and we just get back to where we started.
But I think that there's a misconception where a lot of men who are very affluent and strictly provide just the financial resources can get caught up in that problem, that because I'm providing the finances, I don't have to do anything else. I think that's quite common too.
Is that wrong? Oh, I'm just kidding. I was going to say, is that wrong? I think there is a point where that's a problem.
Yeah.
I think if you think, well, I bring home 7 figures, they have everything they want, leave me alone. Mm-hmm. It's probably not what a marriage is going to build itself upon or sustain itself on. So there's that. So it's not enough that you're just providing. But then you don't want to go maybe on the other end of the spectrum where it's like, how about my feelings? And it's all you think about and talk about. I mean, I think that this argument becomes a little bit more circular. Eventually, I think people have to like know how to keep their emotions in check so you can function and be a normal person. Like, if you know how to have friends, you should know how to have a spouse, right?
I think they're very different.
Well, I think having friends is a building off
not
point.
Very different.
I think it's an evolution because your spouse is often your friend initially.
Yeah.
So then that you kind of narrow the investment of like, okay, instead of me being a buddy to everyone, I'm going to be a best friend to this one person. So then you invest more emotionally. But that doesn't mean you kind of just like, I don't know, become like a basket case. Is that word or phrase used anymore?
I just always think about Green Day when you say that.
I don't know.
It's one of their songs way back when.
I wonder what it's based on. Anyways, let's wrap it. What do you say? What was the take home for you in this conversation?
How do you guy?
How do you guy?
That was a very great question. I think the take home was one in that when we kind of parsed the idea of being very emotionally sensitive in contrast to emotionally stoic and finding a happy, healthy medium and what that looks like. Because a lot of people just say you have to be more emotionally intelligent and you have to be more sensitive. But I think, well, what does that mean? And if you get too far on one side, is that healthy? And I don't think it is. So that was, I think, kind of the take home for me is this balance or dance between being emotionally available, but also being emotionally stoic when the time is right.
I say, suck it up, buttercup. Get to work. Put your big boy pants on. Roll up your sleeves. Stop being a daisy. I feel like Don Cherry.
Don Cherry.
I mostly mean what I say.
Cut that out.
I think people have to be a little bit more self-sustained and be on a stronger footing foundationally, and you have to work on that.
Yep.
I think if instead of you being more emotionally intelligent, you can be more emotionally sound, not letting your highs get too high and not letting your lows get too low. Rewarding yourself, but not praising yourself when it's unnecessary. I actually think that a lot of people have a hard time giving themselves a healthy reward system. A lot of people will be like, hey, you know what? I got this big account and I got myself a sports car. Like that might be a way to measure success. But what happens when you don't get the big account? Are you depressed? Are you, is your serotonin going to be like, what the heck? Like there's no payoff here. Yeah. A lot of people, they have a hard time measuring intermediate steps of success, which is a great way for you to emotionally support your degree of satisfaction internally. So you don't have to say like, when this project is over, then I'll be content. You should be like, hey, you know what? I put in a really good work. I accomplished some of the tasks. Like, some things really like it turned out the way I hoped. Let's go for a movie.
Yeah, celebrate the small wins.
Yeah, and I think when people phrase it like that, there may be a negative connotation saying like, well, it's not a big deal. But it is a big deal. Like recognizing your efforts and rewarding the process is going to help keep your mood and expectations in check so that you don't feel like, you know what, all of this is for nothing. And a lot of people, they get to that point or like, I worked so hard and it didn't come out the way I wanted. It was a big waste. And that will mess with your emotions, mess with your head. But really, if you kind of like zoom out, you're like, hey, you know what? Like you actually moved way further ahead in your development personally, even though maybe the outcome wasn't like what you financially or like, you know, what you anticipated,
Yep.
what you painted, the picture you painted for yourself. Maybe this is a better rendition, but you thought one thing. So that's why you got to measure these smaller steps as like more significant than you expect.
Yeah.
That was very emotionally intelligent of me.
I'm going to be stoic.
Well, you think I'm stoic?
Why did you get headphones and I didn't?
Oh my gosh. This conversation about emotions, this guy feels like he's missing out. Didn't you hear anything I talked about? I said, you didn't get, okay, dude, I'm making sure that the audio is coming through, that I'm hearing you okay.
Oh, I see.
Do you want headphones to hear that you're coming out?
No, that's okay. I was just curious.
See, that's not what life's about. Sometimes people get headphones. Sometimes people just sit beside the CN Tower. What's next for you, George? Dr. George?
What's next for me? Like professionally, emotionally?
That's such an emotional answer. What's next for you? I plan on having a me day. I'm such a jerk. I can hear it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I just continue to work and grow my practice and really be specific with just working in the area of men's mental health. I think it's an area that's heavily needed, hard to break down, you know, the I guess the stigmatization. I think it's come a long way, but has a ways to go. So I'm just going to keep advocating in that area and being passionate and continue to work on myself because you have to.
I like it. I always enjoy talking to you. We always talk about what you want to talk about.
So here's what we're going to do. Next time we have a conversation, you're going to pick the topic, and then we're going to go from there. And I'll bring the quote as long as I know what the topic is. And statistics, as per Chat GPT. George, Perry, and Tom. GPT.
I don't know who Perry is. I talked about Tommy before, and you're George.
GPT?
Yeah.
George, Perry, and Tom?
I mean, that's not what it stands for.
No, but when you get... I know, I just... You know, you've never heard the saying that I use the help of George, Perry, and Tom, and you're like, what does that mean?
Oh, is that what you kids nowadays say?
Kids, that's what I've heard. And I'm like, I said, what the hell does that mean?
Don't you think you're a little old for this lingo?
I would say so.
Yeah.
You're picking the topic next time.
You want to come back next week?
Maybe.
Well, you were supposed to be here last week.
Yeah, you're right. I was.
Yeah, you dined and dashed. All right. No, I always like talking men's health. And what do you mean likewise? You thought I was going to say something.
I cut you off.
You cut me off with it likewise. It's like someone says, someone, the waitress brings you your food and you're like, and they're like, enjoy your meal. And like, you too. That's not the right thing to say. Men's mental health. It's a waste of time.